Welcome to ThePrint. Yogi Adityanath took oath as the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh for his second term on Friday, and with him we also saw a total of 52 leaders being sworn in as ministers, giving us what we call Yogi 2.0. In today's episode of Polygraph, we have with us our political editor DK Singh, who will answer all your questions on what Yogi 2.0 means for UP, for Uttar Pradesh and beyond. So just to let you know, do send us your questions, and I'm constantly looking at them. My team is sending me all your questions, and I will make sure that over the next 20-25 minutes, DK answers as many questions of yours as possible on this. To start off, can you tell our viewers a little bit about Yogi 2.0? Who's in, who's out?
When you talk about 20 ministers are out,
okay,
that's pretty surprising. And given the fact that 11 of the ministers lost the election, and then you talk about so many ministers getting out, that means Yogi is trying to kind of change his entire team. That tells you some kind of intent. It's been done with some purpose. He has things in mind, and he's picking up his teams accordingly. Interesting part was the exclusion of some ministers, say Shrikant Sharma or Siddharth Nath Singh. They were seen as the center's men in Yogi cabinet. Now these people say Shrikant Sharma or Siddharth Nath Singh, they were very close to Amit Shah, they were very close to the party high command. They have been there. Siddharth Nath Singh was actually the face. He was the spokesperson of the government. Siddharth Nath Singh getting dropped is pretty surprising, because I was just watching his interview yesterday, and he was not being asked about his chances in the cabinet, but it was all about how Yogi is going to change things and blah blah. Shrikant Sharma again, he was the national spokesperson of the party. He was sent to UP. He has won the election this time again. Still he has been kept out. So that's a bit intriguing, and we'll come to know gradually. Right now I'm not in a position to say why these people were dropped. But that's something we need to answer. Like, what happened? Was it because of performance, or was there something else? That's when we talk about the exclusion of ministers. As for inclusion, there has been this attempt to kind of give representation to different sections of society. That social engineering formula has been, that there has been a very conscious attempt to kind of broad base the entire thing. The cabinet picking up people from different castes and communities. That is there. Overall, you have 52 ministers, 18 of the cabinet rank, 12 of ministers of state with the independent charge, and the rest MOS. So that's how it is.
Okay. And you mentioned in passing that probably there's some intent behind it, purpose behind it. What do you think? Do you have anything in mind as to what that could be?
It's like taking a fresh guard.
Okay.
So you have got a renewed mandate, and it's a historic mandate, because we have been talking about it so often here.
Of course.
And in our writings that, if Yogi Adityanath comes or retains power, he'll be the first CM of UP, first CM ever to get a renewed mandate after completing his 5 years in office.
That's huge.
It never happened. And then after 85 actually, no government has been able to retain power. So that's another thing. But the first CM of UP to get a renewed mandate after 5 years is a big deal.
Absolutely.
There are lots of expectations. And Yogi Adityanath, you must have seen, like we have been talking about messages and all, that we'll talk about a bit later. But of course, given the burden of expectations, there's so much that is being expected from Yogi Adityanath. So not just in UP, outside also, what kind of message it will send. And you saw all the BJP chief ministers were there during the swearing in. So, of course, many CMs went for Dhami's swearing in also. So that happens. But the entire top brass was there.
Of course.
So the kind of importance the BJP is attaching, or BJP attached to this event, they wanted to showcase it. They're showcasing Yogi Adityanath as well.
And
that's what why I'm calling it the burden of expectations. He has to deliver.
What, according to you, is the larger message of this cabinet?
So one point I would say, A.K. Sharma's inclusion. Now, A.K. Sharma, if you know, he's a Gujarat cadre. He was a Gujarat cadre IAS officer. He was with Modi's CMO. He was in Modi's CMO for about 13 years, from 2001 to 2014. All through. And he was the one who was behind this vibrant Gujarat summit. He was into infrastructure development projects. So he is Modi's man. And then after Modi shifted to the center, he brought A.K. Sharma to the Prime Minister's office, where he became a joint secretary, then additional secretary. And then during the pandemic, when MSME sector was under duress, I mean, he was given charge of the MSME ministry as secretary. And then he resigned 18 months before his tenure was over. If you are a secretary, government of India, you don't resign just like that. He was sent to UP. So there is a plan behind this, sending him there.
Okay.
Now he has been inducted as a cabinet minister. So earlier, last time when Yogi took over, and, we would be asking these PMO people, in fact, that, Independent Minister, for instance, I asked him once, he was Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister, to the PMO. I asked Independent Minister, because there were many reports that, PMO is controlling the CMO in Lucknow. And he actually got upset. I mean, who is feeding you all this? We have nothing to do with how they are doing. And later on, we realized, no, CMO, Yogi was driving his own thing. He had his own selected group of bureaucrats. He had picked them up. And he was running his own administration without much interference from the center. Of course, there would be advice, guidance, of course, but not like any interference. This time, you have a PMO, a former PMO bureaucrat, getting into the Yogi cabinet. So again, I'm not suggesting that there is going to be any interference as such. Because if you saw that, if you go by the body language, and we are sitting in Delhi, so we had to watch the entire thing on TV. So whenever the camera was focused on Modi and Yogi, you could see them chatting. Yogi trying to explain things to him. So that kind of, rapport between the two. And Modi, of course, he has been praising him sky high all the time, we have seen. And that rapport you saw, that consultation process, of course, when you're sitting, your ministers are getting sworn in. You're constantly chatting, of course, talking about UPI. It cannot be about politics at this stage.
Of course.
A.K. Sharma being there, that to me is a big message, where when you talk about this BJP's slogan of double engine Sarkar, I mean, that's how it's going to work. So that seems to be one big message. And if you talk about just a few days back, in fact, right after the election results were out, you saw the Uttar Pradesh government inviting bids for appointment of a consultant. That consultant has to prepare a roadmap for making UP a $1 trillion economy. It's a big deal. Not that Yogi Adityanath has spoken about it now. I mean, he has been talking about it for the last 2 years. But now his objective is to make UP a $1 trillion economy by 2027, by the end of his term. That's a big deal, because if you look at UP's GDP today, it's about 20 lakh crores, 19.40 lakh crore. So when you are talking about a trillion economy, it has to, you have to increase it fourfold in 5 years. It's a big target. But look at the background also. In this election, unemployment was a big issue. Although it did not really hurt BJP that much. But the BJP leaders, I mean, everybody is so conscious that it's a huge problem, unemployment.
Of course.
Now, unless you do something with the economy, I mean, you cannot meet those expectations. I mean, those youngsters who are jobless today, they have voted for you. Now, in the next term, at least you have to come up to their expectations. And I think, the fact that the government invited bids for a consultant for making it a $1 trillion economy, even before Yogi took oath for the second time, that shows his intent. The fact that A.K. Sharma has been brought into the government, that shows the government's intent. And again, that's the double engine I'm talking about. I see all that happening now, at least going by what has happened today.
That's very interesting. We have a lot of viewer questions coming in as well. Just reminding our viewers at this point that you must send us all your questions, and we will make sure that we put it across to DK. Now, since you mentioned Yogi and Modi, there's a lot of talk around, and in fact, a lot of our questions are also asking that, viewers are asking that. There's been a lot of talk about Yogi being Modi's successor. And with this grand ceremony that has happened now, what do you read into it?
Okay, before I come to the question, let me complete what I left untouched.
Of course.
I got a larger message.
Sure.
Look at the caste combination in the cabinet now.
Okay.
We are still figuring out. Our colleagues, Shankar and others are working on this, so we can't give the exact numbers. But if you look at the faces, there is a very conscious attempt to enlarge that umbrella. In the sense, you see somebody like Asim Arun, the former police commissioner of Kanpur, he's a Jata face. He has been made a minister. You have Baby Rani Maurya, another Jata face. She has been made a minister. So you have seen how the BSP lost the Jata votes in this election, and in a major way. Now by bringing prominent Dalit faces. Now Baby Rani Maurya, she was a governor in Uttarakhand. She resigned, came to UP to get elected. I mean, she got back into politics. Asim Arun. So all these things show you that how BJP is trying to. BJP has already made a dent into BSP Jata vote bank, and the intent is to, in the next 5 years, you want to eat into that entire vote bank. Largely, if you look at the caste breakup, well, Brahmins, of course, on the last count, it was more than half a dozen. We have been talking about it, discontent among Brahmins and all that. And they have a sizable chunk also in UP. So, of course, more than half a dozen. I can't give you the exact figures. Then again, you saw even a Muslim face. I mean, everybody talks about his Hindutva politics. A Muslim face has come in. Of course, in the last government also, you have Mohsin Raja. But this government, that Danish Ansari, he has this AVV background. He has been made a minister. So maybe symbolic, but the fact is you want to be seen as a government which is inclusive. So that has been an attempt. Lots of representation to OBCs. So please keep watching our space. Please keep watching reading our reports. By tomorrow, by this evening, we'll have a clear caste breakup of this cabinet of his council of ministers. But as it looks like, there's been a very conscious attempt to broad-base this caste basket. I mean, the umbrella, I would say.
Okay.
Coming to your next question about this entire thing about Yogi being a successor, whether he's number 2 or Amit Shah is number 2, I would just say, yesterday when BJP legislature party met, and many of you must have heard Yogi, must have heard Amit Shah also, and the common refrain was that Yogi was constantly thanking Modi for guiding him. At the same time, he was thanking Amit Shah for his guidance repeatedly. And Amit Shah has also been praising him all the time. So they do not want any such misgiving now that, Yogi comes back, he gets a second term, and then everybody starts looking at him as a successor. And, number 2, whether Amit Shah will be number 2 or Yogi will be number 2. So if you hear them, if you look at their public speeches, they're all trying to kind of remove all these misgivings. There is no such thing right now. PM is there, he is the face, and there is no question of who is going to be number 2 or number 3. This is all media speculation. So as for successor, you don't really see Modi going anywhere in the next 5-6 years, I would say, and assuming that he wins the next election also. I can't predict that, and as a journalist, I can't even say that, okay, next 5-6 years he's going to be the Prime Minister, he'll be winning that. But point is, as it is, you see him playing, or he's fit. He's fine. I mean, he can give another 7-8 years to the party, to the government. So right now, if you talk to BJP leaders, I mean, they're just dismissive. Let's not talk about succession plan. But yes, the fact is, the RSS has been backing Yogi Adityanath, and he has become a big national face. So there will be such talks, and you can't stop them.
Of course.
But we can't really be pinpointing, okay, in this year he is going to be the face or he is going to be the successor. Because that space is vacant right now. Nobody has to talk about PM's successor right now.
Of course, that makes sense. The story on caste breakup that our colleagues are working on, once it's out, we'll make sure that we add it to the description of this video. So do go check it out as soon as it's out. Now, the first question that's coming in, it's from Rupesh Chopra. He's our member. Rupesh, thank you so much for being our member firstly. And just to remind all our viewers, do go ahead and take our membership. And if you do, there are a lot of benefits like this one that we make sure that we put across member questions during any such live. Rupesh is asking, do you think development will take center stage and will BJP give up the cow issues?
Development coming to the center stage, yes. I mean, that's what I was driving at in answer to your second question. That, the way he has gone about working on this roadmap for making UP a $1 trillion economy. Yes, focus looks like that. I mean, focus is there. you talk about cows, somehow you get a sense of, because lots of people are talking about a stray cattle menace during the elections, that how farmers were upset.
Yeah.
Obviously, even if they were upset, it did not really reflect in the votes. The point is that is a problem. Yogi is not going to talk about slaughterhouses because, all these things have happened. He has got a mandate for whatever he has done in the past 5 years. Now, I think in this term, he is going to rectify the mistakes he might have made. For instance, you talk so much about slaughterhouses, but then the farmers, the problems they're facing, and that was also haunting the BJP in the run-up to a campaign. You talk to them and they really looked worried.
Okay.
So I'm sure this time he will talk about cows, of course. But then again, stray cattle is something this government is going to deal with very sincerely this time. And development has to be focused because, mind you, when we were traveling in UP and we were kind of talking to people during the campaign, it was not just about, people would tell you that, okay, there was this Hindutva undercurrent. I don't buy much of it because what we found in the villages, see, there is these tones, that, when he's talking about anti-mafia thing, there's always this anti-Muslim narrative that comes, that he's targeting Muslim mafias. When he talks about cow, he's targeting Muslims. But on the ground, basically, people were more bothered about free food grains and that they were getting. We have been talking about it. Unemployment was an issue, but they were just hoping that probably he gets a second term and that will also be sorted out. It was again a story of aspirations, things delivered to some extent, and more things expected. So even if you saw all these saffron flags, saffron robes in the stadium in Lucknow today, and everybody talks about this Hindutva becoming the central theme there, you saw many saints and seers coming there, but my assessment is Yogi government also realizes that this vote, this renewed mandate is not for Hindutva. I mean, Hindutva might have been a contributing factor to an extent, but that's not the most dominant factor. The deliveries through governance have really worked.
Okay.
And even if people are disappointed, they expect Yogi Adityanath to deliver in this term. And if he don't deliver, then things will start becoming difficult for him.
Okay. So, the next question is coming from his user. This person's username is The Nutters. He's asking, or they're asking, why Mohsin Raza has been dropped. What do you think about it?
Could be performance, because recall, what did you hear about Mohsin Raza all these 5 years? I remember when in 2017 when Yogi, this cabinet was to be constituted. So I was sitting with one of the top strategists who was involved in picking of the ministers.
Okay.
And the BJP had not fielded a single Muslim candidate in the last assembly election. Even this time we didn't. It was the Apna Dal which fielded a Muslim candidate. BJP didn't field one. So I was asking that person that, aren't you going to have you do not have any Muslim candidate, aren't you going to have any representation of Muslims in the government? And he was very clear, look, I know whatever we may say outside, but we know we don't get their votes.
Okay.
But still we cannot, send out this message that we do not want Muslims in the government or minority in the government. So we will have a Muslim, probably we'll bring him through the Legislative Council, but there'll be one.
Okay.
And then we saw Mohsin Raza coming in. But after that last 5 years, we haven't heard anything from him. That could be the reason for dropping him. And besides, when we talk about Danish Ansari, the Muslim minister in this government, he had this he had from AVP, he's from that kind of background. Probably these people will trust him more. He's more committed worker, I would say. So it may not just be symbolic. Given his old association with RSS, probably he'll be more effective. His voices will be heard more.
Okay. You mentioned RSS. Satish is asking, what was RSS's role or influence in the current cabinet?
Look, RSS, when your Prime Minister is from the RSS, your Home Minister is from the RSS, when the entire top BJP brass is from the RSS, RSS don't have to influence. RSS is the BJP. So to say that who is from RSS, who is not, you have some people who have come from other parties. Brijesh Pathak, he may be deputy CM, but again, that's more of giving representation to different communities, and he was somebody who was in BSP, switched over. One became a minister. He didn't have good portfolio, but he was committed to the party and the government. He had to be rewarded. But look at all of this. If you exclude people who have come from other parties, most of the others have RSS background, but which is natural. So, now we should stop talking about whether RSS played a role or didn't play a role. The party is the RSS. The faces you see, they're all from the RSS. So RSS does not have to come from outside and intervene. Yes, when there are some difficulties, say there was this problem with Keshav Prasad Maurya, he was not very happy. So that was last year. You saw many senior RSS functionaries, and even Yogi Adityanath, in fact, going over to his house to meet him and trying to pacify him. On the ground during the campaign, we saw, we had this story, our colleague Madhuparna Das, he travelled extensively to see how RSS is working for Yogi, and RSS was super active in the field. So that's a fact, but probably the degree of involvement may be a bit more this time. But I don't really see that, Mohan Bhagwat or Dattatreya Hosabale would be looking at, the list of ministers, okay, I want this one or that one. Because they're usually assured, they don't have to intervene. You will have people from RSS coming in the government, because that's the entire top brass of your party is coming from there.
You must read Madhuparna's report also that DK mentioned. We'll get it added to the description of this video. Sameer is asking, what do you make of 2 deputy chief ministers?
Earlier also, yes. Interesting thing is Dinesh Sharma has been dropped. And KP Maurya, who lost the election, he's back there as deputy CM. So you look at every state, you have deputy CMs. It's more about the balance of power, as often you realize in some governments, if some people are not happy, or if you're not happy with the chief minister, you have some deputy CMs who don't get along with him just to neutralize him. That's usually, these are the things we have been seeing over decades, especially in the Congress. So if you have a president, well, get his detractor as working president of the party in that unit. If you have a CM, get somebody as deputy CM to neutralize him. BJP, I don't really see that happening in the BJP setup in different states. So here deputy CMs are there more to, to basically send out a message to their communities, and probably help Yogi Adityanath in whatsoever way they can. It's not about a power balance, as I understood from your question that this might be your apprehension.
I'm going to take last 2 questions. So just a reminder, do send in all your questions. Amir is asking, is there anything left for Rajnath Singh in UP politics?
Not much, no. And his son Pankaj has...
that was another
question. In fact, yes, he's emerging. Probably he won by the second biggest margin, this time from Noida. So Pankaj Singh is emerging. Rajnath Singh will be playing more of a role of a patriarch, National president, Yogi Adityanath is there now. Rajnath Singh doesn't need to kind of come back to a state politics and interfere. So that things have moved on. Rajnath Singh will be at the center, but of course he will be a guiding force. So.
Okay. We have a question coming in from Aditya. I know you spoke about this before, but he's asking, can we expect Yogi Adityanath to have a bigger role in BJP central politics? Maybe.
Look, he is not part of the BJP parliamentary board. Now, BJP parliamentary board is something which takes all decisions. So, of course, you have the Prime Minister who takes all the decisions. But again, whenever he needs to discuss things, you have this parliamentary board meeting where you have Amit Shah and Rajnath Singh, some top leaders. I think Yogi Adityanath will be there sooner or later, and BJP will actually give him a larger role, because you can't ignore him anymore in the party setup. He may not be an organization man. See, Yogi Adityanath has never been an organization man as such, coming from the BJP point of view. Straight away, he was Gorakhpur MP, he had this Hindu Yuva Vahini, he was running that. But other than that, in BJP organizational matters, he's not somebody like Amit Shah. Or somebody say even Swatendev Singh was a BJP president, managing things, making electoral strategies. He has been a popular face. It's like Yogi is like Modi. He's not Amit Shah. So let's differentiate there. So his role in the BJP will be more in the capacity of probably the most popular chief minister, who has this political heft, probably far beyond UP. and somebody whose voice has to be heard because he is big now. But not because he has to strategize for the party where to win which election. That will still be Amit Shah. But yes, he will be there in the top decision-making body for sure.
Okay, I think at this point we've reached the end of this live. I really hope you enjoyed it. Do let us know in the comments section and keep supporting us the way you do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook.
Thank you. Thanks, Apoorva.
Thank you.